NASCAR is back! And before the very first frame of television could be filmed for the 2023 season, NASCAR had already been bumped off the former Speed Channel for bowling. We're off to a good start. Yes, sir, Bob. NASCAR is officially back, but unfortunately so are the Next Gen problems. It was one of the biggest stories of last year, and we've gotten through one session, and things are already happening again. A dramatic fire for Ty Gibbs has overshadowed NASCAR's opening day, so let's get into it. But first, if you have not subscribed already, I suggest you do so because you've already missed out on coverage of the Rolex 24 and IndyCar's thermal tests as well as so many other things. It's a great channel to subscribe to if you're a motorsports fan, and NASCAR's heating up as well, so we'll be talking about that a lot during the next couple of weeks. So last season, NASCAR saw a rash of cockpit fires start in its Next Gen Cup cars. Particularly, we saw them on Ford models, with 9 out of the 10 fires throughout the season happening on Mustangs. The only other fire was Alex Bowman at Darlington, and that particular car was a Chevy. Notable examples of the fires you'll remember were Cole Custer and Chris Buescher at Indianapolis, but the most dramatic example was Kevin Harvick's fire, which the criticism was so strong for that NASCAR actually made a change to the cars for the next week's race at Kansas Motor Speedway. NASCAR theorized that the rubber buildup in the rocker box behind the front wheels was heated up by the exhaust underneath, causing the rash of fires. And after Harvick, there was no major fire throughout the rest of 2022. But that, of course, has changed in the very first session of 2023, as the first Toyota has gone up in flames in spectacular fashion. Ty Gibbs, in his first session with his grandfather's team in the Cup Series, was quick right out of the box. But suddenly the car caught alight, flames and smoke quickly visible in the cockpit. The flames even at one point flared up past the passenger side of the car and towards Ty Gibbs in the passenger seat. A frightening moment, and even more frightening from this angle where you can see the flames come past the camera and in front of Ty Gibbs' face. Thankfully, Ty was able to escape this car unhurt, and amazingly, the team will not need to go to a backup car for qualifying or the race tomorrow. The team nor Ty Gibbs have any idea what caused this fire. And I am left with many questions because NASCAR, towards the end of last year, in fact, right after the Harvick fire, there was a statement made to SiriusXM NASCAR Radio that these fires were unacceptable. Changes were made, and they seemed to work. But now here we are, 2023, and NASCAR claimed that they were going through the off-season, continuing to try to make changes to these cars to not only prevent the fires, but also prevent those concussions we saw from rearward impacts. And right out of the box, we've got a car on fire, and a car that's never caught on fire before, a Toyota. So it's concerning to me. There's no doubt about it. It concerns me not just for the fires, but what about the other safety concerns with the car? Because my question is it just an inherent design flaw of this car? Do you almost have to completely redesign it to get rid of this fire problem? And the same question I would have would be for the impact and the crash structures. You know, what if the car is too stiff even with more crushable front and rear bumpers? And seeing as they couldn't get rid of the fire problem, I wonder. And I think fires in racing, like this is not something we should necessarily be like discussing as a possibility at all. And yet here we are again discussing a fire in the very first session of NASCAR in 2023. It's crazy to me. And now these fires have affected all three manufacturers, so there's no real potential defense of like, well, okay, maybe it's just the Ford bodywork, maybe it's the Chevy bodywork, but hey, the Toyota is fine. And I think the biggest concern I would have is not so much the fire, because as we've seen, most drivers have been able to get out of the cars when they're on fire. In the unfortunate situation with Chris Buescher, he actually set the onboard fire extinguishers off, then had to drive the car with all the extinguisher residue coming up into the car and clouding his vision and hurting his breathing. But what I'm worried about is what happens when there's a crash and maybe the driver can't get out of the car quickly and then it catches on fire. I think that's the big concern that I would have, because it does seem like this happens, for the most part, on tracks that require a lot of braking, and thus a lot of rubber and debris buildup coming back into those wheel wells. And then with the exhaust, which they had to change because it was making the cockpits too hot, you have the heat coming up and all that debris, all that fuel catching things on fire, and then it gets to the door foam, and the door foam catches on fire, as Brock Beard pointed out over on Twitter. That's been an issue with NASCAR Cup cars for decades at this point, where the door foam has caught on fire. Not quite to this extent. And I think the scariest thing to me, at least in this incident with Ty Gibbs, was like that explosion that you saw come across the windshield of the car. Like, why are things like blowing up in the car? That's not something that I want to see at all, especially inside of the cockpit. And this is, I think, the most really dramatic fire inside of the car. In fact, there really wasn't much flame outside of the car. So it almost seems like NASCAR fixed the problem of the flames being external and then coming into the car. Now it seems like the fire starts internally and comes outside, which I would say is the worst of those two scenarios. So I'm very curious as to where they're going to go with this, what changes will, if any, be made. The good news, I guess, is it won't probably be a problem at the Daytona 500. They don't break enough. They don't collect enough debris in those wheel wells to really cause a fire. Of course, I'm saying something out of school, and maybe it will end up being an issue. Time will tell on that one. But I think during the Clash, it would seem as though we're probably going to see it tomorrow, I would guess. If I had to hazard a guess, I bet one more car will go up in flames, unless there's a major change, sweeping change that comes across NASCAR in the next 24 hours. I think we're probably going to see something like this happen again at the Clash, and everybody will get up in arms on it about it on social media. Again, I don't think it's going to be a major safety issue at a track like the Clash, because frankly, you're not going to see a big crash at the LA Coliseum the way you would on a super speedway or a place like Darlington with Kevin Harvick. And I think one of the bigger problems with the Kevin Harvick thing was not only the fact that the car caught on fire, but I think you think back to that incident and they didn't even throw the yellow for quite a bit of time. So there was all sorts of things that were wild about that. But that may well have been the tipping point for Kevin Harvick thinking, hey, do I really want to keep doing this NASCAR stuff? That may have been the moment where he decided he was going to make this his retirement season, which is, something to kind of chew on and think about. And it's also interesting that Fox has Tony Stewart in the booth for this particular race because, as we know, Tony was none too pleased about what was going on, particularly with the fire on Kevin Harvick's car. Of course, Cole Custer was another driver of his that had one of these big old fires. So you think back to October, November of last year and how fed up Tony was with the whole thing. And now you're seeing it again. And what happens if one of his cars goes up in flames and he's in the broadcast booth? I shudder to think. But I guess we'll find out all about that tomorrow. So I suppose I will have a video coming out about the Clash. Of course, the Clash might end up being a bathrobe video because of how late they're going to go because of California. I'm also interested to see, starting fairly late on a Sunday night, what the crowd is like at the LA Coliseum, especially with the traffic concerns last year, which really caused the crowd to arrive late and leave early. And I've also got another podcast clip that's NASCAR related that's going up tomorrow morning. I'm still kind of working on integrating the podcast into the channel. I'm kind of interested to see over the next couple of weeks how the clips work, how the live show works, and how all of this stuff integrates into the channel. So if you have any suggestions, leave them for me down in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video.